Good afternoon. We're gonna review some basics of SAP and SQL queries in this session. We're gonna start with what's available as far of reporting tools, not just queries, but other reporting tools. Then we're gonna drill down into the query manager and look at what's available there and what kind of method we have there. We're going to look at the main SAP tables so you can get yourself familiar with those and what is, INV1, INV2, and things of that nature. How to join between different tables, so how to write a query with more than one table, which could sometimes be a challenge, how to join different tables. So we're going to talk about the different tools for reporting. There are multiple tools to create a query. One of them called the query under tools queries. There is the query generator and the query wizard. The query wizard is really a tool, supposed to be an easier tool that also customers can use. But I really like the query generator. It gives you more flexibility and it doesn't take so much time to learn it. Based on the past, I trained customers on the wizard as well as the generator, and overall, everybody preferred to work with the query generator, so that's what we're going to work with. The other tool is the SQL Studio Management. I use that a lot when you have a lot of queries, where you have a long queries, when you have a query within a query, when you need to check syntax and stuff like that. It's much, much easier to write long queries in SQL than in SAP. There are other tools that are available for reporting. Crystal reports could be covered in a separate session, as well as in Excel. We can connect Excel directly to SAP or basically to SQL. And additional tools for business, querying and stuff like that are BI tools like Power BI from Microsoft and other tools. There are so many different BI tools. And obviously, HANA comes with the HANA Analytics, which enable you to create a lot of views, dashboards, graphs, and things of that nature. All right, we covered Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the Query Manager, query security and printing options. So let's go into SAP. Obviously, we saw that any query we can do through the query generator or the query wizard. I'd like to also look at the query manager for a second. So every saved query, together with some system queries that come with the system out of the box, will be saved under the query manager. So you can manage categories and create new categories. So I can always add a new category called training. I choose all groups, and we can talk about the groups in a few seconds. But once I add that, it will be available for me and for other users that have authorizations. If I wish not to see the training or any category that was already created, I can clear all the authorization groups, and then it won't be shown in this view. I'm a super user, so as long as I'm having at least one group checked, it will show in the main query manager. That basically allows you to create structure and to have queries for different people and for different groups of people. And you can set authorization based on that. So if you go to the authorization area in SAP, you will see that under the authorization, close to the end, there are reports. Obviously, there are a lot of reports in the system, but if you open the query generator, it gives you all kinds of options about what are the authorization different people can have to create new queries or to edit existing categories. But also there is authorization for the different groups. So that will allow you to determine which user will see which group of queries. And that's basically cover the groups that we see in the managed category. So if you check, for example, that for training only group 1 can see, it means that as long as a user you are authorized for group 1, you will see and you will have access to those queries under that. Great. So with that being said, the other thing is the printing options. When I'm generating any query, for example, any query could be easily right-click, copy table, paste it in Excel. Any query could be double-click, filter by any column. If you want to summarize any column, you do Control and click on the header, and then the total will be shown here.
That was Control and click.
Right, Control and click on the header. And then you could do filtration, for example, if I want to see just the client, so I can further filter that to see, where BP type equals C shows only clients, and then I can look only at clients. Normally, when you print a query, it doesn't look good. It's more for the use of being able to drill down and to further analyze the data. So I think for a design report, it's normally the best is to work either with Crystal reports or with the PLD that I can show shortly. If you would try to print it, you can try to print it as window or table, but that just not very nice presentation of that query, and sometimes it's easy just to copy paste to Excel. Another option to design a report fairly easily without going to Crystal Report is to use another tool called under queries. It's called Query Print Layout. With that, you have a couple of templates. Anyways, I don't want to get into that, but that allows you to link a query with a PLD. That means all the results of the query will be shown in a PLD view, and then you could delete column, add different variables in calculation, and that will have a nicer look if we want a designed report. A better and more flexible way to do that will be to use Crystal reports that we can cover in a completely another session. I think that's about it as far as chapter 2. Chapter 3. All right, so we are now getting into that because this is now how we are able to identify which table we are looking at. How do we get information? So there are two main ways I'd like to explore. Or maybe three as shown here. One of them is the view system information. Basically, if you are in a sales order and you want to know what the table is, so you could do view system information. In my case, it's already checked. And what will happen if you look at this area on the top, on the left bottom, every time I hover over a field, it will show the table name and it will show the field name. In that case, I'm hovering over the customer name and it shows me that the table is ORDR and the field is card name. Same thing with delivery date, for example. The table is ORDR and the field name is doc due date. Some fields will show as variables like the total, but you see, so you do not see, because it's a calculated fields that looks at the current screen, so it doesn't show what's in the database, but that field is also stored in the database. And I will show a different way how to get there. And there are multiple, if we look at the grid, we can see that, the table is different here. So the table is RDR1, and in that case, item description, it shows description. Okay, we're looking at the warehouse, RDR1, and the field name is warehouse code. Okay. The other way to look and identify different queries is to go through the query generator, and you can do tab that will expose all the tables, including ets are basically user-defined tables, anything that start with et. But if I can now double click on description and just start to type sales order, and that will show all the tables related with sales orders. So, RDR 14, 19, 21. We can see also the RDR1, the sales order rows that we just looked at. And there is also ORDR, which is the header of sales orders. But as you can see, every component has a lot of tables related to it. The other thing, you can also tab and start type the table that you're on, and that will bring you directly to the table. So sometimes it's useful to understand the tables and take it from here. The other thing to look at table is the SDK. So there is SDK help files that is normally in every install of SAP, and that will show you all the tables, and that will actually show you more information. I go to that just when I need something specific. I don't go to that all the time. You can search different components. So for example, sales order, it will show the different objects, object lists, shows their object ID. I think in this case, I actually don't have it installed locally on that computer, so it doesn't show me anything on the right side. I'm not able to hover over the right side of the server. So anyways, that's the SDK help, and we can cover that later, but that shows you more information actually about the attributes and the related tables and all the appropriate fields, what's exposed in the UI, in the user interface, including what's exposed during the DI. So if you would like to bring it through DTW or through SDK, through development, and you want to know how that field called, and if it's exposable through the DI, that's the best way to identify. Okay, so let's look at some of the tables that are very important, and we use them almost every time in every query with every customer. So some of those. So for example, if we want to look at customer or vendor's information, that will be a business partner master data, right? And that will be the table OCRD, right? Now, like in other cases, there are subtables to that as well. So if we are looking at contact persons, that table will be OCPR, a contact person. So there is some kind of logic here. If we want to look at ship to addresses, it will be CRD1 and stuff like that. Okay. If we look at item information, the table, as we can tell, is going to be OITM, and OITM, item name, OITM, foreign name, and things of that nature. And then also here there are different groups. So if I want to bring the group, I can choose to bring the group. It will show the code. But if I want to show the name of the group of an item, I can drill down and see that this table is OITB. Same thing here. If I want, that will show the code of the vendor. If I want to bring the name or other information, I can drill down, but I already know from previously that vendor is stored in OCRD. Okay? And so forth and so forth. Okay, so for example, the grid here of the warehouses within an item called OWHS. Sorry, OITW actually. Okay, and then the sales order, we saw that it's ORDR. AR invoice is OINV. So I think that kind of cover this first portion of the training. Now we're gonna go through the main tables structure in SAP Business One. The main table normally start with O. Okay, so if you're looking at header of invoice or header of sales order, it will normally start with O. So if order, the acronym the developers of SAP decided to give it is RDR, so header of order will be ORDR with invoice, credit memos, and so forth. So it would be OINV, ORIN, and so forth. Okay, so every time we want to get information from the header, it most likely start with O. And then there are different numbers to different extensions of the order table. We take order as an example, but it will work the same with invoices, credit memos, and also all the purchasing sides. So it's exactly the same structure. So purchase order is POR and an AP invoice and so forth. So the structure will be exactly the same. So O is the header, the one is the line, and those are the two that we work with them all the time, especially with orders, with purchase orders, with invoices. Okay, it's always ORDR and RDR1, or OINV and INV1. Okay, those are the two that are most common, but I wanted to bring to your attention some other ones that sometimes we use them. There is RDR2, the freight in the rows. There is RDR3, the freight. So, for example, if we look at sales order, when I create a new sales order, I can obviously go to the freight area, and you see that I have two lines: freight, insurance, and maybe some other customers have more than that. So in the ORDR, there is, let me put here something. So is the total of the $40 here, right? But if you ever want to get a breakdown of what each amount is made of, that means that will be, for example, RDR3, which is the details of the freight within the order. There is also for tax amount, for installment. If we ever need to identify the bin location, it's going to be under RDR20. There is document references. There are a lot of tables also that are unrelated to the either to the American localizations, or some of them are even for future use. Again, we can always look at the view information, or to go to the query generator to see what's available and what it means. Okay. There are some other tables to remember. There is a table called a doc. I don't know why it says a sod. It's supposed to be a doc. And that shows all the history. So you know that you have a change log, and that shows you, for example, if I clicked here in this order says hello, and I update the document, the table saves the history. So when I look at the change log and I want to see differences, it shows me which is the user that updated that value. So if I ever need to go back to the history, ADOC is the table, but it's not a simple query, because ADOC is a table that contains all the history. So it says invoice history, but it's really history of all the attributes in in SAP Business One, so it includes invoice and credit memos and sales orders and stuff like that. So normally when you query that table, you want to say first when object type equals something, so you're not looking at all. For example, 13 is invoices, so I'm going to see only the changes in invoices. Another thing to think about, draft tables. Draft tables normally happens when you're in the middle of approval process. It saves that as draft. Also, almost any document, instead of adding the document, you can always right-click Save as Draft. The draft document is called DRF1 and ODRF. And in the same case, it saves all the drafts of all documents, so you will need to filter. For example, if you're looking to see only the drafts of sales order, it will be where object type equals 17, which signifies the sales order. So for example, I'm going to query generator, ODRF is the drafts. And if I need things from the lines, I'm going to connect it with DRF1. And if I want to see only drafts of orders, I'm going to do where equals object type equals 17, and I have no data. Yeah, there are some drafts. All right, are we ready to get into SQL now? That was just the opener, and now we're gonna start write some SQL. Every SQL statement is the same. Start from where. It can have group by, having, order by. This is every SQL statement. That some SQL statement can have only select. They can have only select from, or they can have those 3 lines, select something from where. Okay? But this is the order if you're using group by, having by, order by. And there are different rules how to write it and how to put it in place. I try at the bare minimum to have, select from where and not have it in one line, because it helps the future consultant or somebody that is going to modify your query to better understand the query. It's also good to have some notes. There are different ways to add notes on the query, but maybe when we write queries, I will show that. So after the select is going to be the fields that we want to present in the query. From, it means from which table or tables, and then it will be with additional statement with join, inner join, left join, right join. And where, what conditions we want to have. We want only today's, we want just the open documents, we want just the active customers, any where condition that we want to have. Especially with the documents or with queries to the client, we want to make sure, do you want to see cancellations or not? Do you want to see, all kinds of things that we normally ask the client during understanding what they want to see in the query. Group by is there so we can group by a specific field. For example, if you want a report that will show how many invoices for each client, this is where we're going to use group by. Having is going to be a condition on the grouped field because you cannot do that in the where. And then order by if we ever want to sort the report in a specific way as a default. So let's talk about joins. So there are SAP, when it joins table, by default it brings the inner join. So SQL and table joins. So basically those images shows you what data is going to be presented. So for example, when you do inner join, only the shared between the two tables will be presented. There is, and in many cases, there is no difference if you do inner join or left join. For example, if we take ORDR, let's take table A as if it's ORDR, and table B is going to be RDR1. And you join between them based on the document entry or the document number, or It's document entry in this case. So the document entry for this and for this is going to be the same. The circles in this case of order header and order lines is going to be one on top of the other, right? Because every document have lines and every line has a document. So if I look at SAP, there is no situation where I can add a sales order without at least one line. It's always part of a header document, so there is always inner join between those two. Now, there is also a situation where I will use left join or right join. Left join brings all the data from the left table, but also the shared between the two tables. And same thing, but the opposite way with the right join. It's going to bring everything from the other table, from table B. And a full join will bring both information from both tables. I think the main difference for you will be to understand the inner join and the left join, and I'm going to do an example in order to better clarify the difference and when you're going to use left join, for example, versus inner join. If we go to write some queries, for example, I want to query the RDR1. I normally start with the many and then the one. So if I have ORDR and RDR1, it is best practice to start with the many, with the lines, and then to bring the ORDR. In addition, when you choose any table, do you see all those bold fields? It actually shows you that there is a link to another table. So in many cases, instead of typing now ORDR and have SAP do the link for me, I do a long click on the doc entry and drag it into this area, and it will bring the ORDR. That will allow me to bring other tables as well without having the need to remember what was the table name. For example, the item code will lead me to OITM, which is the items table. And you see how SAP by default does the join. It does that very well in 80% of the cases. So you do need to check your joins, okay?
Okay.
It's very good with lines and header, but in other cases it could not do the right join because it doesn't support left or right join. You will have to manually type it. So this is it. So for example, if I show doc entry from here or from there, obviously it will repeat multiple times. By the way, I can type distinct. It will show me every value just once. So that will show 3, 4. But again, because every line will have header and every header will have lines, the inner join is great here. When it's not enough, when do I use the left join? So let's look maybe at one of the sales orders.
Okay.
Let me take the last one so I can modify it. So 383 is the doc entry. This is also the doc number. For our customers, it's not always the same. They may have a doc number that is different from the doc entry, okay? The doc entry is the internal number of the system, and the doc entry is the internal number, and the doc number is what you see on the screen. And do you see here that we have contact person? So let's say I want to have a query that will show me the customer code, the customer name, the contact person, and the total of all the open sales orders, right? That's easy enough query. So I'm going to start from scratch. And my table is or I can do tab ORDR, sales order, just to make sure I'm on the right table. And I can choose document number. This is the select, this is the from, this is the where, order by, group by, okay? This is the list of table, and after you click on each table, you will see the appropriate fields from the table over here. Let's say I'm choosing here document number. I want to see the card code, card name, and we said document total, and we wanted to see the contact person, right? Contact person. Double click on that. Okay, and let's say I want to see just open. So I say where doc status equals.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, or I can open the condition and do that with clicks. So to say equals O. With alphanumeric values, you want to put a single quote before and after. With numbers, you don't have that problem. So I'm executing, and now I have the contact person. What's the problem is? The problem is that I don't see the name of the contact person, I see the code. So a user will have to drill down to see on each one of them, hey, number one means max stack, okay? So, and you see that there are some without any contact person, and even the 383, it's attached with Martin. If I put a null value here, and I run the query again, now we'll see that this one is empty as well. And you see the total. I have how many records? 40 records, right? 40 open orders total. So what I can do is go to the table of the contact person, or like I showed you earlier, long click and drag it over here. That will show me it's OCPR. It's the table of the contact person. And now I can have, contact person name from T1. So RDRT0 inner join OCPR T1 on T0 contact code equals contact code. So it does the join with the right field perfect with inner join. Let me show you what happens when I execute. So I execute. Now I see the code and the name. I can probably get rid of the code now, right? But what's the problem? Two are missing. So in the past, when I saw some customers came to me and they say, hey, we have sales orders disappeared from our system. And I said, what happened to them? And they said, disappeared from the system. We can't see them. And I said, why? And they said, we run this report, this query, and we do not see those sales orders. And I know for sure that I entered that sales order. And then I looked at the report, and there is one thing that is problematic here. One, it's not organized. So I'm going to do select from where, okay? Second, the problem is that I see inner join. So what the system does, it brings only the values that it finds in both tables that are shared between both tables. So orders without contact persons are excluded from that report. And that's in that case, in order to see all, if I want to see all the orders, all the values from the left tables, and if values from the right table if exist, instead of doing inner join, bring me just what exists in both tables, I got to do left join, because I want to bring everything from the left table, which is ORDR. Now when I change the inner to left, and I execute that report, I get now 40 results. If I have nothing from the right table, you just leave that empty exactly as I intended to do. By the way, once you make changes in this view, you can also double click. Sorry, you could do something like that to modify. You can do something like that to have it in a bigger, to have more space. You could hide this if you wish. some user will have it grayed out because they don't have an authorization to edit queries, so they will see that like that, grayed out. Once I make any changes, like moving a line, changing inner to left join, I cancel, or even if I save but cancel out of that, there is no link between the query generator to the query that already executed. You see, if I execute again, it brings that to the same situation. So sometimes I like to change here, and when I go to manually change things, I basically get rid of that. So the query generator for me, especially in a complicated query, is just a helper to get the field very fast and what I need really quickly. But then I move it to SQL or to just write it in SAP. Okay, so in this case, if I want that to be saved, I type here left join. I maybe get rid of the contact code, and maybe I don't want to have it as a name. I want to have it. I want to call it contact name. So I can always do that to change the name. So for example, I don't want to have card name. I want it to call customer name, not BP. So I can type customer name. Okay. Some other people do that a little bit differently. So other people write it as into single quote, and they say customer code. It's exactly the same. Okay, customer code, customer name, contact name, and then I can always I can save it. Customer contact, order contacts, open orders contacts. Okay, that's one good example. Let's look at another example to look at joins. Let's say I want to create a query on item master, and let's say I want to bring all the information of the item, including the default vendor. So I can run this. I can type OITM. That will bring me everything from the item. So item code, item name, blah, 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 blah. And I want also the preferred vendor, right? Preferred vendor perfectly will bring me the code of the vendor. Let's say I want to have the name of the vendor. I need to link it to the OCRD, right? But do you see the issue I can have if I will inner join it instead of left join it? So if I have in my item 105, I want to make sure that after this query I still have 105, so I can connect the OCRD here. Not a problem, it will do a great join, but I just need to make sure I'm going to do left join, so it won't give me limited information. And then I can obviously put the PP name from the second table. By the way, if I'll try the same, but I'm going to type right join, what will happen? So if I run it, I get a report of all vendors. And you see some have only the name because the code I got from the items table. Okay? And it shows me duplicate items because that vendors exists in multiple items as a default vendor. And normally I use, most of the time I will use the left join because my base query is bringing, the orders or the invoices or whatever. And then I attach additional, queries or subqueries or tables. And then normally it will be a left join because I still want to maintain all the information I already gathered about my orders, for example. And so when I want to attach more tables, it most likely will be left join, because my base table is on the left.